Hello and welcome. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. In a significant ruling aimed at curbing arbitrary actions by state authorities, the Supreme Court has pronounced stringent guidelines to eliminate the practice of bulldozer justice. This practice, employed by many states in recent times, involves the demolition of homes and properties of individuals accused of crimes before a fair trial. The Apex Court has declared that no house of an accused can be demolished solely on the basis of allegations without due legal process. It has emphasized that the truth of such accusations must be determined by the judiciary and not the executive. Taking a tough stand, the judgment reinforced the separation of powers, noting that adjudicatory functions are reserved for the judiciary and the executive must not overstep its authority by assuming the role of the judiciary. The Supreme Court drew attention to the fact that demolishing a family home because one member is accused of a crime amounts to collective punishment, which is impermissible in law. The bench noted that a house is not just a property but a shelter for the entire family. Therefore, before proceeding with demolition, the state must assess whether such an extreme measure is justified, considering its impact on the family, including women and children. Keeping this in mind, the Apex Court laid down guidelines. It's directed that no demolition should be carried out without a prior 15-day notice to the owner of the property. The Supreme Court said the notice shall be served upon the owner by registered post and fixed on the outer portion of the structure. The notice shall contain the nature of unauthorized construction, details of the specific violation and grounds for demolition, and the demolition has to be videographed. Violation of these guidelines will invite contempt. However, we see cases where justice still takes decades to be delivered. We all know how it took more than 8 years to deliver justice to Nirbhaya. Thus, the larger discourse, of course, is around the quick bulldozer action versus the slow but sure cases. And of course, the big question is, how can we speed up justice? Joining us live at this point is Justice A.N. Mittal, former Judge, Allahabad High Court, and former Chairman, State Law Commission, Uttar Pradesh. Welcome. Thank you very much for being with us today, sir. How do you view the Supreme Court's verdict, and will it put an end to the bulldozer justice debate?
Certainly, the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court is very commendable, and it is in the public interest. And the Supreme Court has laid down certain guidelines. Once again, the rule of law has been established, and the Honorable Supreme Court has said that if the government wants to demolish any construction, firstly, it should give 15 days notice, then a decision must be taken on that. And if the person whose property is going to be demolished wants to challenge that order, he should be given the proper opportunity of hearing. Secondly, the Supreme Court has said that merely because one person is an accused, the demolition action must not be done. Thirdly, very important, that the officers themselves cannot become the judge. It's an old saying in our judges that one cannot be judged in his own cause. So the Supreme Court has further laid down the guideline that if the unauthorized or illegal construction is compoundable, as we see in the matter of development authorities, that if the construction is compoundable, then it must be compounded. And again, Honorable Supreme Court has imposed the liability of the officer concerned if any construction has been illegally demolished or it has been demolished without proper opportunity of hearing, or it has been demolished without giving any notice. Then certainly the officer who is nodal officer of that demolition shall be liable for that, and the damages may be recovered from his salary.
Okay. Why do you think, Justice Mittal, has the government resorted then to bulldozer justice in so many cases?
Basically, what we see that there is tendency of unauthorized constructions, there is tendency of encroachment. We see that various temples or mazars are constructed on the public road, public way. And previously, the Supreme Court has categorically said that if any construction on the government land has been made, the government need not to give any notice. So we have to differentiate between the public land and the private land. As far as the construction on the private land is concerned, may be authorized, may be illegal, but the procedure has to be followed. As far as the construction on the public road or public land is concerned, certainly the previous guideline of the Honorable Supreme Court will be followed. And although in those cases also, the proper opportunity of hearing must be given and notice must be given. But you see that whenever any construction is made on the public road or on the public property, nobody comes in front. It's only from the background. So to whom the notice is to be given? Suppose somebody has constructed a temple or a majar on the public road. He will not write his name that it has been constructed by such and such. And his identity may also not be clear. So in that case, the formality of notice may be a difficult task. But as far as the private property is concerned, the government has to follow the guidelines. And always, it has always been a principle of law that is called the audio alterum paltrum. Means no one should be punished without giving proper opportunity of hearing. So in this case also, Honorable Supreme Court has provided the opportunity of hearing, firstly. Secondly, to challenge the order passed by the concerned authorities before the higher authorities.
Yes. Do you think that the government argument of setting precedents with bulldozer justice has not worked then?
Basically, there was no such action as far as I can say about the Uttar Pradesh, because it started from the Uttar Pradesh. And whatever demolitions have been made, to my knowledge, they were on the public property. The public land was grabbed by some unauthorized or illegal persons. So I don't think that it will affect the working of the government in any way. But certainly, regarding the public property, the procedure has to be followed.
Yes. Isn't bulldozer justice then in itself a lesson to judiciary though also, in a way, in fast-tracking cases to avoid executive from taking coercive steps?
I don't think that it's a lesson to the judiciary also, because all these works are done by the executive. And to my knowledge, various matters were challenged before the Honorable High Court whenever there were orders for demolition. And the concerned persons either had not answered the notice, or they could not show their right of construction on the land in dispute. You have to differentiate between the two. Private land means you are owner of that land and you do have the documents on that, but the construction may not be as per the plan as has been sanctioned by the Nagar Nigam or the Development Authority. That is another aspect. But as far as the unauthorized construction or land grabbing of the public land is concerned, certainly I think the government may continue such action.
Okay. And finally then, if cases like Nirbhaya have dragged on for 10 years in which there was a clear case of rape and murder, don't you believe that the executive gets forced to resorting to quick steps, to restore people's faith in the system then?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, because the proceedings of the court, they are delayed due to various reasons. You cannot blame the judge, you cannot blame the court, you cannot blame the court proceedings. There are certain advocates, there are certain other aspects which also delay the justice. So, taking action by the executive is not by itself. It is certainly within the knowledge of the government and with the permission of the government. And certainly, before taking permission from the government, the executive must have apprised the government about the full facts. But if the executive has apprised the government with half-hearted facts or with wrong facts, then in as per today's guidelines, the concerned official shall be liable to restore the construction, and such construction shall may be reconstructed from his salary.
Yes, but how do we restore faith then in the judicial system, in order to avoid vigilant justice?
Basically,
Mr.
there
Mittal?
are various
Yes.
aspects of encounters, and as you know, that the crime is rising day by day. Various new modes are being operated, and it's also a fact that whenever the police intends to arrest the accused, then the accused uses the force. And it has been provided in our law that if the there is use of force which may cause death or may cause fatal injury, then the other person can also, in his private defense, use such force. So wherever there is encounter, there is magistrate inquiry, there is judicial inquiry, and if it has been found that it was a fake encounter, then certainly, as per the result of that judicial.
Yes. Yes. Okay, Justice Mittal, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us. Vivek Tankar, Rajya Sabha MP, is joining us live. Mr. Tankar, welcome. Thank you for being with us. How important is the judgment given by the Supreme Court? Will this end the bulldozer justice debate?
I would call it a historic judgment for human rights, for rights of personal liberty and life. This is something amazing that has happened. The whole country, especially in the North India states, was scared of this bulldozer Raj. It was a political tool, it was an administrative tool, it was show of arrogance by ministers, chief ministers and bureaucrats. And in 24 hours they would demolish houses under the pretext of encroachment. Alishan Makan, 5 manzil ka, 24 ghante mein you demolish. And then they will give false notices produce false notices of previous days and say हमने इनको बहुत मौके दिए थे. So Supreme Court has put a stop to bulldozer Raj. It says anybody violating it would be punished. It will be contempt of court. In my opinion, this being the law of the Supreme Court, it has retrospective effect. And whatever has happened in the past is also now illegal. If people want restitution, compensation, they can go to criminal court, they can go to civil court, and everybody who's done a wrong act will be answerable and will be punished by court.
Absolutely. Also, do you believe then that the government's argument of setting precedents with bulldozer justice then have not worked?
No, it was, as I said, it was a political tool. It was a divisive tool, and it was a tool to display the arrogance of the people in power. This is how chief ministers and bureaucrats would talk. As if, I can demolish a house in 24 hours. Now, this cannot be allowed in a democratic country which is governed by a constitution. We believe in constitutionalism, we believe in rule of law. And if rule of law is supreme in this country, this is what Supreme Court has said today. I am grateful that the Supreme Court of India has stood by the people of India and stopped this.
Absolutely. Now, don't you believe bulldozer justice in itself is a lesson though to judiciary as well, in fast-tracking cases to avoid executive then from taking these coercive steps?
I am happy that you asked me this question, because better late than never, but I would have been happier if this would have come early, because it has led to a lot of distress. It has led to a lot of demoralization. I know how people were scared, how people were suffering, how people were being threatened by the bureaucrats. You can't imagine the kind of money these bureaucrats make through this sort of bulldozer justice. You just send a notice to somebody or a word to somebody that I'm going to demolish your house tomorrow. That man will run helter-skelter, do anything. So it became a source of corruption also. So anything which is arbitrary, anything which is capricious is also a source of corruption.
Yes. How do we restore faith then in the judicial system in order to avoid vigilant justice like encounters and bulldozers that we've seen in rape cases?
I agree completely that there can't be vigilante justice. Because it's a very dangerous trend, vigilante justice, because this means you are allowing justice to happen on the streets. Now, if you allow that, then where is the rule of law? Rule of law is the first casualty. And the belief in the systems, in the institutions goes away. So, while we deprecate vigilante justice, I would also urge the judiciary to introspect. And we will also raise this in Parliament, in the forthcoming Parliament. It has time has come for judicial reforms in this country. You know, people cannot wait for justice for too long. People need speedy justice. And judiciary will have to devise methodologies of giving speedy justice to people, because we can't have 5 crore cases pending in this country, and who can sleep after that?
All right, Vivek Tankar, let's leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on this story. Let's also get in now Anas Tanwar, who's joining us live, Supreme Court lawyer. Anas Tanwar, how do you view the Supreme Court's verdict, and will it put an end, according to you, to the bulldozer justice debate?
I find this judgment to be historical, first of all. And second, I'm really hopeful that it will put a spanner into the wheels of the bulldozer that have been going against doing injustice, against the minorities, against the oppressed. And this is indeed historical. I'm hopeful that it will be implemented. The problem comes that the implementation has to be from the state. And in this case, the state is the one who has erred. There is a reason why Supreme Court had to reiterate on its position on rule of law and right to shelter. But Supreme Court has given enough guidelines, and there are rules and regulations now in place. And I'm really hopeful that this will be one of those exceptional guidelines that will really be implemented.
Yes. Why do you think the government has resorted then to bulldozer justice in so many cases? Do you not think then that the government's argument of setting precedents with bulldozer justice has not worked?
Look, it started. Of course, it has not worked. The judgment is quite clear. The government opposed our petition. Matter of fact, I was representing one Ganesh Gupta, who had a juice shop in Jahangirpuri that was demolished. And in that also, the state had filed its reply, and the notice that they have annexed as annexure was of some other shop of some other person. The state was obviously not complying with the law. The rule of law does not give state any power. Even in case of a leave alone an alleged criminal, even convicted criminal, you cannot demolish their house. You cannot give collective punishment. House is not just one person. If for example, A has committed a crime, you cannot go and demolish the house that will put A and his wife and his son and his father and his mother and his grandmother on the street. This is collective punishment. This is it completely abhorrent to the rule of law.
Right. Now, isn't bulldozer justice in itself a lesson to judiciary as well, in fast-tracking cases to avoid executive from taking coercive steps?
State cannot give such a signal to the judiciary. Every time a house was demolished, was brought down, it also brought down with it the rule of law and the majesty of the court. Only, and state the judgment is quite clear. The court has reiterated the principles of separation of power. Only judiciary has power to punish. And if you are so much concerned about dispensation of justice, then provide better mechanism to judges, provide better infrastructure, get more judges, provide them good salary. Instead, you will go on demolishing the houses. How is that even fair? How is that even reasonable? Why are we even discussing this?
Right. Now, if cases like Nirbhaya have dragged on for 10 years, in which there was a clear case of rape and murder, don't you believe then that the executive gets forced sometimes to resorting to quick steps, justice steps to keep people's faith alive in the system?
The judicial process is also run by the state. Then if you give, why are there so many pendencies? Most of the pendencies are against the state. A lot of litigation that has been filed is filed by the state. A lot of time adjournments are sought by the state. The delaying tactics is applied by the state. So state is responsible for the failure of a judicial system, if at all. And instead, they cannot go on punishing people and violating the rule of law. We stand on a very strong, on a very revered constitution. And that constitution puts people first, not the state. And state has to work under that rule of law. They take legitimacy from that. Every politician, every officer who takes the oath of office, they take oath on the constitution. They say that they will abide by the constitution and rule of law. So the state is violating its oath. The politicians, the leaders, the officers are violating their oath when they indulge into exercise like bulldozer injustice.
Yes. How do we restore faith then in the judicial system in order to avoid vigilant justice like, cases that we've seen in the recent past? My final question to you.
First of all, I will not accept the premise that the bulldozer injustice was because of the failure of the courts. If all was that, why did not the state say that in their counter affidavit? The state did not make this argument. The union was present. Mr. Tushar Mehta, the learned solicitor general, was present. They did not make this argument. I will not accept this premise. Second, there have been conferences, there have been multitudes of conferences on this where the Prime Minister was also present. There have been money that has been, and fairly enough, disbursed for the better infrastructure of the courts. But that has to start from the district courts itself, from the courts below, not at the Supreme Court level. We need better judges, we need more judges, we need better infrastructure. Only yesterday, the Supreme Court pointed out that the lady judges in a certain state did not even have access to toilet. They were using the toilet meant for civil judges, men civil judges or senior officers. So then this is all on the state and the state's failure to provide a better infrastructure, and state should stop filing multiple appeals on trivial issues. So once a state does that, the judicial system will start functioning better. It is the state that has clogged the judicial system.
Yes. Okay, let's leave it at that. Anas Tanwar, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on this big story. Let's take a short break.